Why is cancer so complex to treat?
It is a complex disease because cancer can happen in many different parts of the body. Everything we're talking about today is heralding a much brighter future. The first thing I see is just, when I look my patient's eye, it's just fear. Fear of the unknown. Because it's something you can't control. Your body's not responding as it should do. Everything about cancer care is trying to give the control back again. Let's go bigger, let's go faster, let's go better, let's be more aspirational.
I'm Dominic James, and today I'm joined by Dr Lennard Lee to discuss how cancer care is being transformed through early detection, personalised vaccines, and cutting-edge research.
Healthcare advances doesn't have to be slow. Cancer discoveries don't need to take decades, they can happen quicker. And the only thing limiting now is our imagination and also our bravery to try. If this podcast does anything, it should be a vote of hope for patients and doctors and nurses out there that actually they are really important. They are making a difference to people's lives, and that they're playing such an important role for society.
Welcome to Health in Hyperdrive, the podcast where we explore the breakthroughs shaping the future of healthcare. Dr Lennard Lee is Associate Professor at Oxford University and Chief Medical Officer at the Ellison Institute of Technology and a national leader in cancer innovation. He co-founded the Cancer Vaccine Launchpad and led the record-breaking Galleri trial with over 50 peer-reviewed publications. Lennard, welcome to Health in Hyperdrive.
Thank you, Dominic. It's an honour to be here. I really appreciate you inviting me onto this fantastic podcast.
Thank you so much. I have to say I'm really excited to have you here. Cancer vaccines and the work that you're doing is an area that's really both fascinating and cutting edge. I think maybe the place to start is if you think about cancer, I think I read that maybe 1 in 2 people are going to get cancer in a lifetime of people born today. And I think everyone has a relationship with sort of cancer. They've heard of cancer. They may have a relative who has cancer, or they may have suffered themselves. But could we go through, maybe cover some of the basics of what is cancer? Why is it so complex to treat? Just to kind of give us a little bit of a grounding.
Thanks, Dom. It's a good question, actually, because this is something that's often in people's minds. It's one of our great problems. As more people are living older, you can develop cancer, and that's something we need to think about because it affects us all. It affects our families. We know someone's been affected by it, and at its core, it's just a growth. It's where your body's gone wrong, and a bit of your body mutates and starts to grow, and it starts to spread. And it can spread to different parts of the body. So really, if you can catch it early, that's a good thing because you can sort it out. But for many people, about half the people, it's caught too late. And actually, all you can do then is try and control it. That's the here and now in 2025. However, everything we're talking about today is heralding a much brighter future where maybe this isn't the future. Maybe it can be much better.
And why is cancer so complex to treat? Why is it, say, different from, say, other diseases?
Yeah, it is a complex disease because cancer can happen in many different parts of the body and there are many different causes. So things people might have heard about is breast cancer, lung cancer, bowel cancer, prostate cancer. Those are the big ones we see in the UK, but it can be any part of the body. It can be in the bone too. And each of those are driven by different causes. Your immune system responds in different ways to it. On top of it might have been caused by different things. Maybe you smoked in the past before, maybe it's due to appetite. So there are many different ways it can come about. It can become in different parts of the body, and the treatment's all very, very complex too. So that's why you've got highly trained doctors, oncologists, people like me, which are trying to understand it and make the big advances. So yeah, it is complex, but I'm quite positive about the future here because there's a lot to gain.
And then, so you're an economist. I got that right. Maybe.
Oncologist.
You're an oncologist by training. So that's cancer doctor. Everyone will know that. But so you will see the impact that it has on kind of patients' lives. Like how would you maybe kind of characterize? If we take a little bit the patient perspective, like how would you maybe characterize that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because people go to your. I mean, it's a family member goes to a GP with a pain that doesn't go away, which is getting worse, or a lump which is getting bigger, or bleeding which doesn't stop. I mean, these are the common things they think about. And actually, I guess the first thing I see is just, when I look my patient's eye, it's just fear. Fear of the unknown. Because it's something you can't control. Your body's not responding as it should do. It's not quite what it once was. And so that's the first bit. And actually, everything about cancer care is trying to give the control back again. This is what we can do. This is what might help. But you're right. A cancer diagnosis does stop. It makes you think who you are, what you can be. And it's going to affect people physically, emotionally, and financially going forward. We're lucky in the UK that cancer care is covered by the NHS. However, there's obviously many different aspects of it which is going to affect families. And I think this is why we definitely need more change in the system, because it's got to get better, especially if 1 in 2 people born today are likely to get cancer. It's going to be a major problem.
Yeah. And then I think that's really interesting. You know, of course, I've had my personal experiences, not with me having cancer, fortunately, but certainly with friends and sort of family members, and all those things that you said are really true. You know, it's kind of the treatment. It makes people reflect on their lives, and the treatments can sometimes be really uncomfortable, and so it's kind of really life-changing, and for a lot of people, it's kind of scary and mysterious as well, I suppose. You started to mention maybe a little bit from a societal point of view. It's obviously a big area for society and for the NHS. Can you talk maybe a little bit around that, like from a healthcare perspective, at a macro level? What's kind of the impact of cancer, or why is it important?
So Dominic, it's really important for societies to get on top of this problem and keep seeing the advances we're seeing, because the children born today will live longer than us. They may live for about 100 years, maybe beyond, who knows? At the rate of advancements, we're seeing great advances in weight loss control, in disease prevention, and that's all coming online, huge technology gains. And yet the advances we're seeing in cancer is maybe slower. You can get cancer early now. Some people are getting it very early. So we need to be aware of that, because that's going to stop people reaching their full potential, whether they want to have high-powered jobs, whether they want to start a family. The most important thing people have got is time and the ability to spend it well. Cancer takes that from them. And so I guess from a society perspective, it's just a very sad disease to have. It's stopping people work. It's stopping people have those Christmases that they look forward to. And it's also costly too at the moment. However, I guess what we're trying to do in this podcast is point to a brighter future. Right. And that's what's great about this podcast. We're going to try and cover all of that over the next hour, I think.
Yeah. So I think that's super helpful, just like as a grounding. I think it'd be great to have a little bit of your background. So I mentioned a little bit in the introduction that you're an associate professor at Oxford University. You're also an oncologist. I think you're also a policy advisor. Can you tell us a little bit about that kind of your role, a little bit your background, and those different aspects?
Yeah, Dominic, I count myself very lucky, because I've got different skills now which allow me to get big projects over the line and make them successful. So I trained as a doctor. I studied medicine at Cambridge and Oxford, good universities, good grounding, and therefore I understand what it is to have a cancer diagnosis and treat it well. I'm also a research doctor too, because actually the doctor that I aspire to be is one which not only can give you the treatment that's here and now, but maybe is allowed to think a bit more about what the treatment that's coming. I'm very grateful that Oxford University gives me that time, because research makes every year better than the year before. That's what research does. And then I got diverted in 2020 because I realized that there's this additional power and skill which I needed to learn, which is also to help nations and government officials also see the opportunity of what they can do too, really lift them up. And therefore I got involved in Department of Health in 2020, moving to Department of Science, Innovation, Trade, and also NHS England too. Really taking that slightly higher level picture, so that you can start to link all bits of the system to deliver these big projects which can change health. And I believe that we can make cancer care better. I believe that we can continuously advance as long as we're brave enough to do that. So that's why I started to pull together these hats. And I'll be honest, 3 hats is sometimes a bit much. However, it does allow you to get things done, and it really makes the UK shine, really bringing people together to the table to solve these big problems.
And are they strike me as being like super complementary, right? On the one hand, being a practicing physician, you get to know what treatment's like on the ground, and both the working environment and the patient's lived experience. From a research perspective, you get to kind of ensure that you're focusing on the right things and shaping research studies in the direction that are going to be meaningful for a practitioner. And then from a policy perspective, you're ensuring that the government or the system will enable some of these innovations and technologies to kind of get through and remove some of the barriers. Am I thinking about it the right way from your perspective?
Yeah, and I think the people which work in their silos do a fantastic job. Like, there are so many great doctors in the UK, and they become very special experts in terms of treating disease they treat. And likewise, the researchers who will bury themselves in the labs and make the great advances of tomorrow. And the policymakers who make great government decisions which change the direction of our country. And the interesting thing is, actually, I think there's strengths in all these professions. And therefore, I count myself so lucky that I've ended up being the person which has got all 3 skills. Because if you bring people together, that's where the magic happens. That's solution there, whether the government can learn about the research that's coming and deploy it into that clinic. And that's what all of our flagship projects have been able to achieve. So it's a unique role. It's different. I'm still trying to make it work. And it's all about the proof points. Can we make our country great? Can we make the advances for cancer patients? Can we herald the great discoveries of this country? And I think we can do. And that's what's amazing about this role. Very lucky to have it.
Yeah. And that's kind of, I think, I've worked in a bunch of other industries, and I think that's one of the things that's maybe a little bit unique about health. It's really a sort of a team sport. A lot of people need to be kind of working together from a lot of different disciplines collaboratively for kind of success and change to happen. Maybe before we just move on to the current state of kind of cancer treatment, would you be able to maybe explain what does it just make it a little bit more real for me and for folks listening? What does it mean to be a researcher? What's your day-to-day look like, or what does it mean to be a policy advisor? What does that what does that look like? And then I think we have an idea of an oncologist, but probably that's a misconception. What does that look like? And then how do you do all of that in a week?
Yeah. So being a doctor is seeing someone with cancer. I treat prostate cancer, so I try and support them through that diagnosis. I mentioned looking people in the eyes, they've got fear. I try and just give them a bit more hope and maybe get them to think about the important things in life, and maybe not make them worry so much about the treatments which I'll give, but I'm going to try and give them as much time as they can possibly get. So that's, I suppose, things. And it'll be about prescribing drugs and chemotherapy and seeing people. A researcher is a different one, because now you're thinking about using the modern tools, which you don't see in the NHS at the moment. So supercomputing, AI, sitting in labs and hearing from the great scientists and trying to always think that question, okay, you've discovered that. How could that change that person who I just saw on a Friday morning? How could their lives be changed by that discovery? So you've got to try and connect that bit. And on the policy piece, it's just really interesting because we're seeing major shifts in technology across the world. You talk about partnerships, we talk about trade agreements, we talk about nations working together, and they talk about national level things, which is, again, bigger than a healthcare system or research lab. And so quite a lot of that's just feeding the right advice in so they can know, actually, that's the strength of the country. That's our USP. And that's how it connects the lab and to the patient. So it ranges between holding someone's hand, typing on a keyboard and accessing supercomputers, all the way up to sitting at meetings with flags around you.
Right.
Such an unusual situation. But that's what the role is. And trying to connect that to weaving it allows a truly interdisciplinary approach, which allows good projects to go very quickly.
And you've mentioned this before, and when we spoke earlier, you kind of shared with me one of your kind of key drivers is to do kind of big things and big changes. Is that essentially your motivation? Is that's what's pushing you to take all of this on?
Yeah, I think people don't. I mean, I think it's some people do this. However, it is always possible to achieve more and do more good for people with cancer. Mm-hmm. It's always possible to think bigger. If I think back to what I was like as a child or student, I was a competitive swimmer, but I want to push it further, and therefore I decided I was going to swim across English Channel. Not many people make that jump from swimming pools to swimming this channel, but it is possible to go more. And then you get halfway across, and you're really cold, you've got cramp, you're hungry, and then you think you want to give up, but you just keep pushing, and it can become, and then becomes a matter of mind and getting your support team around you, and it can be done. I think the same can be done about these cancer projects. Let's go bigger, let's go faster, let's go better, let's be more aspirational. So yeah, it's a driver for change. And I didn't make that switch until 2020, Dominic, where obviously we were faced by the greatest challenge that humanity's ever known. And I was lucky because I got called up into the Department of Health there. And that's when I saw a country shine. I never realized that science could be so powerful. And yet in 2020, you just need to think back a few years. I know it feels like an age now, but we saw those newspapers come out, the discoveries happening every single month. I was part of those projects in terms of testing. I saw what's happening in Oxford in terms of vaccines. And everyone said, science cannot deliver in 1 year. This takes 10 years. But it wasn't true. We made discoveries, and this country was fantastic. That the world was fantastic. The scientific community pulled together. And I'm just, now what drives me now is seeing that silver lining, because healthcare advances doesn't have to be slow. Cancer discoveries don't need to take decades. They can happen quicker. And the only thing limiting now is our imagination and also our bravery to try.
Fantastic. I think that's that really brings us on to like maybe if we look at, say, cancer treatment today and how that functions, what are the sort of the current trends and what's kind of happening in the NHS or in cancer treatment overall?
So if you look at the broader picture, Dominic, it's an interesting one because, as you say, in its current status, people are living longer than before, which is fantastic. It's what your previous work was doing, your previous passion in the drug industry. Better and better drugs coming through, which are hopefully safer and safer. That is fantastic. But there's also the short-term picture. And I think anyone who's out there will probably read the newspapers and actually see the difficulties that this is having. Waiting lists going up, people struggling to get to A&E, people not seeing their GPs. And also this constant barrage about the NHS failing. But the vision of the NHS is just simple people wanting to get together, wanting to give treatment which is not going to bankrupt you, free at the point of use. So we've got this mixed picture at the moment where if we let the technology develop, it will become better and safer. However, there's the support that once was there for the NHS and for cancer care. Maybe we're getting distracted. We're thinking about wars. We're thinking about global warming. However, and I do think these are really important to think about, but what about the people who are getting cancer? Should we not be also thinking about them? It's 1 in 2 of our population. So let's go ahead and make the advances because it could be great.
So a little bit your kind of characterization at the moment is, I don't want to put kind of words in your mouth, but you feel like is cancer treatment declining at the moment, or it's not accelerating as fast as you kind of think it can, or as the potential it has?
The technology's there. It's fantastic technology looking to the future. Genomics, AI, vaccines, supercomputing, it's all coming. However, I guess when I step into an NHS hospital at the moment, I see a workforce that's just really tired, which is being battered by more and more demands, more and more reporting, asking to do many, many more things, often bureaucratic things. And I think if this podcast does anything, it should be a vote of hope for patients and doctors and nurses out there that actually they are really important. They are making a difference to people's lives, and that they're playing such an important role for society.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting the way you kind of portray both of those kind of angles. On the one hand, when I introduced you, I sort of talked about the improvement in cancer treatment and the hard results that people in society are sort of benefiting from. Tens of percent improvement.
Brilliant,
So
isn't it?
it's fantastic, and yet also you definitely hear there's definitely like a negative tone when people talk about NHS in the news. It's often about kind of problems. So I think that's kind of a reality. And then for me, I've lived in a lot of different countries. And, I've lived in the US, I've lived in Asia for many years. And I'm really grateful for free at the point of care, not just for me, but for everyone. And I think in some degrees, people in this country, we sort of take it for granted a little bit because we've grown up with it. So I think the way you kind of characterize it is really really interesting. The other thing I guess this is what we're going to be talking about today is what you're kind of sharing a little bit is there's so much technology out there and so much new opportunity to improve cancer treatment that really you're essentially saying that we're probably not taking full advantage of what's out there, and your kind of personal mission is about how do we kind of change that and start to take advantage of these things for both the benefit of the people working in the system, but then also, of course, the patients as well. So now's probably a really good point. You talked a lot about kind of different innovations. You talked about AI supercomputers. I think you talked about testing. We talked about vaccines. Should we maybe go into some of those topics? Can you explain what's happening and what's exciting in maybe those kind of areas?
We should be excited because what I see over the last half decade is major technologies coming up across the world, and they have so much opportunity to change the future of cancer care. Because, let's take the premise here that the aim here is to help your body recognize and maybe get rid of that cancer yourself. That could be a paradigm shift. We have therapies at the moment called immunotherapies, which work in a small percentage of patients, but could be much better. So the things I'm really excited about are 4 things, really. Number 1, the data. Because everyone who I know who've had cancer wants to make sure that their lives, their time helps the next patient. And therefore, their data is really important. How you were treated, what worked, what didn't work. There's nowhere better to get this than the NHS in the UK. It's a joined-up healthcare system, one of the biggest in the world. We're not thinking about single insurers and getting money from health insurers to get the data. This could come from the NHS. That's one huge potential here, so we can learn from every patient we've seen before. The second one is genomics, the ability to understand what your genome looks like, because now we can probe your immune system, your cancer, in more detail than we've ever known how to do before. So it's so much information we can now glean, and we need to learn from the cancer. The third one was probably that bit which we never predicted, the power of vaccines. Vaccinology was discovered in the UK. It was the smallpox vaccine. Jenner, he discovered it. But actually, we've had this renaissance. Huge investment and flows accelerating technology into the future. The UK giving the first vaccine outside a clinical trial, that Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, completely unpredicted, happening within a year. Absolutely phenomenal achievement by the Vaccine Task Force. The question there is, can there be a vaccine against cancer? And that's what I'm also excited about. And the last bit is something that we never saw coming, which is AI. We've probably all been using ChatGPT nowadays. What you're doing there is effectively giving it a lot of data and asking it to learn very quickly. So it's learning across the whole internet very quickly. And it doesn't surprise me for many people to think about the fact that actually it's now entering healthcare. And it should, because it makes things simpler, easier, and faster. So if you've got the data, if you can understand cancer, if you've got new treatments coming like vaccines, and if you can learn quicker and share that knowledge across the world, there's something special will happen there. And that's what I'm really excited about.
And can you maybe go into like each of those in a little more detail? I think data is a really surprising one. In some respects, I always give this example. Like my Google search history is a lot more detailed and thorough than my medical history because my medical data is like spread all over the place. There isn't that kind of holistic, joined up view of an individual anywhere. Yet the potential for that in a health service across an entire nation seems really huge. So what's kind of happening there?
That has to change, doesn't it? It just has to change, because I don't think anyone affected by cancer diagnosis will say, I won't share the learnings from what I've gone through. I don't see that. Mm-hmm. However, that appeared to be the default position until 2020. But what I will say about the power of data, let me just give you an anecdote. Should chemotherapy have continued in the pandemic? Because at that stage, we were being told that stay out of hospitals. Hospitals are where you're getting people with infections, keep them out. And actually, that became the question that everyone started asking there. Is that true? Should we have stopped chemotherapy in the pandemic? So one of the power of data, that a project which shows power of data, which I managed to lead, was the UK COVID cancer monitoring project. What's the premise? Well, if everyone could share their data across 100 cancer centres in the UK, can we answer this question? Because it wasn't about best guesses, it's about data. And for the first time under the then health minister, Matt Hancock, he allowed data to flow. He said everyone can combine their learnings. And then what magic happened then? We could see cases spread from London to Birmingham. We could see what's happening. We could monitor people with breast cancer and prostate cancer and lung cancer and work out if they were surviving or not. And then it only took, I think it's about 90 days before they had the answer. Yes, you can give chemotherapy in a pandemic. And furthermore, the converse was true. If you stop chemotherapy in a pandemic, you will lose lives. And then you can now balance the risk here between continuing cancer care and not. That information came out there. And the Europeans did it with, followed us, ESMO, CoCare. The Americans did it with CCC19. But that was the power of data. Data could tell you what was safe and what was not safe, what could keep people alive and what couldn't. I mean, this was a very unique use case, and the UK led the world in this UK coronavirus cancer monitoring project. But that's the power of data. You get insights which you could never get from a single hospital or a single doctor just trying to remember the last 5 patients they treated.
That's so a couple of things there. I mean, I'm very grateful that you were involved in that and that really happened. A big thank you for that.
Thousands of people around the country all providing data. It was fantastic.
Well, a big thank you to thousands of people. But I guess then the extrapolation of that is, was that a kind of a one and done and then we went backwards, or has that kind of philosophy now expanded and improved? Are there now new opportunities and new things happening following from that?
So this is where we've got to just monitor the situation, because data was flowing across NHS hospitals. It was a COPE notice that went out. When this is being tested now, how acceptable does people find it to have all their data in one place? I think there's a privacy lobby which says that no one can have anyone's data. That's one point. And I think that's, if you don't want to share your data for the greater good of the people, community with cancer, I think that's okay. However, I don't know if that's the right thing to do, because people should be allowed to share their data. So there hasn't been big projects which are as successful as that UK cancer coronavirus monitoring project yet. However, we just need to monitor this piece here, because there is great potential here. We shouldn't fall back. If we know that data is so powerful, we shouldn't make the choice to let it go backwards.
Yeah, and I would say my experience kind of mirrors a lot of what you're saying. I think if there's a lot of talk about, and especially with health data, a lot of talk about health and privacy, and certainly in some circumstances, people are concerned both of exposing their own kind of private information, but also how others, for example, a travel, like an insurer, might sort of use that data. So that's kind of definitely one side of the sentiment. Yeah. On the other hand, when you ask people if they would share their data for a specific meaningful purpose, like a clinical trial or a research study or to help others, inevitably people say yes. And then, there's the other, this is probably a little bit of a trite example. I use this one a little bit. The cookie example where, checking that box to say I allow cookies on
Not an eating cookie.
No, not eating cookies. No.
That would be nice.
We can talk about that. But like if, the cookie check box, a few years ago, for some reason, it was in the news. People were concerned about cookies. Now, most people I know, they're just annoyed that they have to check that box. They just check yes. It's not really a privacy issue. They just didn't know what it was going to be used for, and now it's an inconvenience that they have that privacy box. So I feel like there's a big kind of communications piece there, but I think the sentiment that you or the premise that you have that people would be willing to share their data to help society more broadly. I think that's true for sure.
Thanks, Tom. And actually, maybe there is an example actually just come to me. Something that happened in 2021, which I was the NHS England delivery lead for. That's two technology areas here now, which is data and genomics. It's an NHS Galleri study. Have you heard about it, Dominic?
I have heard about it, but tell me more. This one blows my mind because I think kind of prevention and tests for cancer is such a difficult area. So, but you explain. You know it a lot better than me.
This is a brilliant project which I also led for 3 years. So can we imagine a scenario where there's a blood test that picks up 50 types of cancer just from a single blood draw? Because we know that cancer leaks abnormalities genetic DNA into the blood, and we can pick this up in principle, but not been tested. So the vision is that could we ever have a scenario where every year you just pop down to Boots or Superdrug and just get a blood test, and it'll say, you're clear, keep going, or I'm a bit worried, go get another test, or I think there's a cancer here. So that was what was being tested in 2021, a blood test for 50 types of cancer. And the most amazing thing there was that we did use that data flow actually for that one. NHS Digital, fantastic aspect of our public service. They said, well, we've got a repository of people who want to be part of research and are willing to give blood. And all we need to know was that they didn't have cancer. So they ticked their box to share their information. So a cancer study, if it's a big one, it's like 1,000 people. We in our country want to prove that we can go bigger. We can do pandemic-style research in the cancer space. And so what we need to do was recruit 140,000 people in a year. And because of the data flows in the country at that point in 2021, we did it. NHS Digital was able to contact millions of people. People put their hands forward and say, yes, I want to test a new technology, and then went ahead and did it. So that was another example of where two technology fields come together, data and genomics, to test a new blood test for 50 types of cancer. It's fantastic.
Can you kind of break that down a little bit? Well, the first question I have is, now 50 types of cancer, how many types of cancer are there, or what percentage of cancer patients does that cover? So maybe that's one thing. And then maybe there's the second thing is how did it work, and is this over the study, or it's still ongoing?
So it's probably most of them, a good proportion of them, probably most of them, which is fantastic.
It would be 90%, or I don't want to put
there's always
a high percentage.
Yeah, there's definitely super rare types of cancers, and you can't get them all. But 50 is a lot because actually most people have the common 4, which is unfortunately people get breast, lung, prostate, and bowel. These are the common ones. That was part of the test too. So it was most of them. In terms of the question, is this available now? Not quite yet. That we're assessing the data. And that's the thing about research. We need to be very, very careful. We need to check at those 140,000 people, what was the good, what was the harm, on balance, could that save lives? So that's ongoing at the moment. So you can't pop into Boots or Superdrug at the moment to ask for this new blood test. Not yet there. And how does it work? Well, so I mentioned cancer's a growth. It just grows. And I guess cancer's supplied by blood too, so it needs nutrients. So the blood goes in, and then like any cell in the body, DNA is released as it breaks down. So DNA, some bits of the cancer DNA will be floating around your blood. It's called circulating free DNA. So it's an abnormality in your blood which shows you're likely to have cancer. What this test was doing was using sequencing technology, the same thing that you used to sequence the human genome, but this time just in blood to look for these cancer markers. So that was what the test was looking at. It was looking for markers in your blood called circulating free DNA, which was increase your likelihood of cancer. That was what the test was for. Hopefully we'll have the results in that in the next few years, as soon as we know it's whether people have cancer or not.
And sorry, I'm going to kind of turn maybe your words back on you a little bit. Sorry, not in a that sounds very sinister. I'm not definitely not doing that. But like results in a good few years sounds like quite a long time. Like, why do these things like take so long? I mean, on the one hand, you said we have to be careful and we have to make sure we're doing things responsibly. But then on the other hand, you kind of shared a little bit the COVID examples and said we can move really quickly and we can do things in 90 days. Like why do these things take a long time?
Good question. So when I say good few years, I don't mean 5 years, 10 years. That's definitely not what it's looking at. It's because supposing you have a negative test, I guess what you want to be very sure is that if you got a negative test, in 3 years down the line, you still don't have cancer. That's a useful thing to know. It's giving you a clear signal for that long. Likewise, if you got a positive test, are you going to get cancer this year, next year, the year after? When is that going to be known? And so I guess as scientists and the statisticians will tell me they've got to be very careful results because we don't want to overpromise. And therefore, they're just monitoring the 140,000 people over time now. And that's what the amazing thing about those people. Those in the NHS Galleri study, they volunteer their data so they can be monitored over a period of 2-3 years for their follow-up data. I don't know the exact amount. I can't remember now. I've forgotten.
So it's just really about there's no way to accelerate that because you have to wait 3 years or 5 years to see whether the test was correct or not. There's I always love this. This phrase that someone once told me. It's like 9 women can't make a baby in a month, and it's kind of that, right? It doesn't matter what resources you kind of put against it, you just can't kind of accelerate.
Yeah, you've got to wait 9 months to have a baby. You've got to give time to make sure that people don't get cancer or see when the cancer comes up, and hopefully this is one future example.
So you've talked about data. And your second one of your 4 things was genomics. So is there anything you would add to genomics, or this is probably the best example of that?
I would probably link genomics in with cancer vaccines now.
Okay, let's talk about that.
That's really exciting. So what's the background? Well, let's go back to original aim. Can we have a drug which helps your immune system recognize and maybe eliminate or control the cancer? And therefore, vaccines come to this space now because your body is amazing. Everyone's body is fantastic because you can get a cold and you'll clear it in a couple of days. You can go to, I don't know, I went on holiday to Mexico. You might have caught a chest infection there. The body's never seen this before because it's from a different part of the world, but it can rapidly recognize it and control it. So the question is, what's stopping the immune system recognize cancer now? Because that's abnormal too, just like any other bug that I might have got on holiday. And therefore, that's the premise about vaccinology. The interesting thing about vaccinology is it was quite, it was good. It was a fantastic field. We all had our jabs when we were little. However, things have started to accelerate now because in the UK brought through its own Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine within a year, and along with that Pfizer-BioNTech. And people are asking, how did it happen so quickly? Well, that's the power of genomics and vaccines put together, because now you can see what the abnormalities are and then make a vaccine to target those. And so the cancer vaccine world is really, really quite exciting at the moment. I think it would be fair to say we are the world leaders, if not one of the world leaders in this space. And that's a great legacy because that technology sphere could change what it means to have cancer.
And so I had some exposure to cancer vaccines in my kind of previous life at MSD, and I think that there were probably 2 different examples. So For HPV, you have a vaccine to prevent the virus HPV, which can cause cervical cancer. So the vaccine is not directly against the cancer, it's against the virus that can cause cervical cancer. And so in some respects, you could say that's a vaccine that prevents cancer. However, the more modern vaccines, they're kind of targeted. So the Moderna Merck vaccine is really around a personalized vaccine for your specific cancer. And it's essentially to stop reoccurrence of skin cancer at the moment. Have I got that?
Yeah, that's
got that right?
That's right, Dominic. Exactly so. It's vaccine technology which is now being applied to cancer. And what's the problem it's trying to solve? Well, it's this problem. I've seen the person with the fear in their eyes, with their family members holding their hand, and they're looking absolutely terrified. I pointed them at the surgeon, and the surgeon said, okay, I think I can get this out. And they do it. Surgery is an amazing specialty. They cut the cancer out. But the problem we're trying to solve here is that every year they have those checkup scans, and there's a fear element now. Is that cancer going to come back? Yeah. What can I do about it? And the doctor might give them some chemotherapy to reduce that. But how do we activate the immune system there? Can we stop that cancer coming back? So that's maybe where the cancer vaccines are now being focused on. And there's amazing work being done by MSD in this space and also other companies like BioNTech to try and stop that cancer coming back. Because if you can activate the immune system to patrol cancer, then that just reduces that fear. You've got your own immune system patrolling for the next decade, 20 years, and maybe you can drop that chance a little bit.
And did I explain it kind of correctly? I feel like it sounds like when people think of vaccines, they're like, and if you meant, well, a cancer vaccine will blow most people's minds. But I think then in their head will be like, I'll have one jab and that'll stop me getting cancer for the rest of my life. It's not that, is it? It's post-treatment. I have this personalized vaccine. They look at my specific cancer, they create a vaccine specifically for that, and then teach my body to look for that same type of cancer and fight it. And then the idea of this, I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing you a little bit, is instead of that kind of 5 years of blood tests, or probably I still do the 5 years of blood tests and scans and everything post-cancer, but it gives me an additional level of certainty and assurance that or chance that cancer is won't come back again. Is that that's right?
Exactly so. And I wonder, Dominic, should we delve a bit more into that personalised aspect?
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's mind blowing. go for it.
That is mind blowing, isn't it? No, who would have thought that was possible? Yeah. Okay. So what does this mean? A personalised vaccine? Well, do you know when we were kids, we all had the same we had vaccines. I don't know, hepatitis, polio, all those bits. Well, everyone then had the same vaccine, mass-produced. And then likewise in 2020, we all had our boosters and everyone had the same, whether you were in Africa, whether you were in Asia, whether you were India, whether you were Russia or UK, you all had the same vaccine. Well, get this. This is where the science fiction element comes through. With cancer vaccines, they can be personalised. And what do I mean by that? Well, everyone's cancer is different. They've got different mutations. And your immune system is probably quite different from mine in terms of what you can recognize. And so what we're doing now is using tools which are completely bespoke. So we industry designs vaccines which are specific to have the abnormalities that are seen in that person's cancer. So the person who comes up to me who's had the operations and wants something to try and stop the cancer coming back, maybe for lung cancer or maybe for bowel cancer, their vaccine is only for them because we know what their cancer looks like and we design a vaccine for them. And the next person that comes through is different vaccine again. So every vial is for you, only for you. That's unusual. That is personalized care. And then you're no longer a conveyor belt of drug. It's personalized for you. Does that make sense, Dominic? It's quite hard to explain, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So how I understand this is that you take a little biopsy, a little bit of the cancer, This is like my
exactly.
my brain. You take a little bit of it, you do the sequencing of it, and then they use technology, AI, some like generic AI, to find a candidate vaccine that would address the specific nature of the vaccine that I have, and then the company will manufacture that vaccine and then inject me with it.
Yeah, exactly. So,
sorry, I was
Dominic,
tripping over my words as I was saying that, but that's it.
yeah, 4 simple steps. Can you get the cancer out?
Yeah.
Most people can do that. Can you sequence the cancer? So you cut the cancer out, you put it into genetic sequences to see what abnormalities are there. And cancer's got between 1,000 to 10,000 abnormalities. Number 3, you put it through a learning algorithm. Some people call it machine learning or artificial intelligence, and say, okay, you've got these abnormalities here now, about 10,000. Which of them can your immune system recognize? And the 4th bit is manufacture a vaccine with those abnormalities in to stimulate the immune system to recognize it. Simple steps, but it's possible. And I think that's a good chance this will be better than everyone getting the same drug. What's the analogy? Well, I guess analogy in the real world is that at one point, everyone used to go to the Costa del Sol just because they had packaged tourism. Everyone could go there. And some people were happy, some people weren't happy. Nowadays, when you go on holiday, it looks at where you want to go, what time of year you want to go, what do you like, food, culture. And personalization has many benefits. And I think what's happening here is that it's happening in the cancer world now. So the treatment is tailored, and maybe that's going to be more effective. We've got to find out.
Yeah, and that's probably a good question. Like, where are we with this? I mean, the way you've described it, it sounds a bit science fiction. I know it's a little bit more advanced than science fiction. Like, where are we with, like, you're involved in the clinical trials for this, I think. Where are we with that, and when are we going to get the results, and when will patients start to benefit from it?
Much, much further ahead than anyone thought. So the UK announced a cancer vaccine advance in 2023. So not that long ago, actually, just over two and a half years now. Actually, it was in January 2023, so a bit longer than that. And where are we now? Pretty advanced. So let me give you an example. There are 3 stages of clinical trials before a drug is approved. Phase 1, which is a couple of people to make sure there's no bad side effects. Phase 2, where you're looking for a signal of activity. Maybe the cancer shrunk down a little bit. And then phase 3, where you're going to know how effective it was in terms of percentage. And the first drug has gone through completed phase 3 testing now. It's a drug called V940, and the results are just awaited now. And it's for skin cancer, a common type of skin cancer called melanoma. And behind that, there are loads of trials in now phase 2, in bowel and lung and ovarian and renal. They're all accelerating really, really quickly. I can't know for sure. However, I think it's possible that within 5 years of 2020, within 5 years of our approved mRNA for the pandemic, we're going to get approved cancer vaccine. We need to see what the trials are. We don't know just yet how effective it is, but that's going to be fantastic. So pretty advanced, Dominic.
So we're looking at an approved vaccine for cancer this year.
Don't know about this year or early next year. I mean, all I know is that the UK over-recruited in this melanoma study, and therefore the trial finished 1 year ahead of schedule, faster than anyone thought was possible. And now they're just monitoring people to see how many of those cancers come back. And so I would say 2026 is going to be a really interesting year in this cancer space, because if this works and we can train the immune system to recognize and stop a cancer coming back, that I believe is really exciting.
So I'll probably say that again. So we're looking towards an approved cancer vaccine in the UK in 2026. You think?
I just know that the trial's completed. Okay. I hope our regulators be fast, because the MHRA, which is our sovereign regulator, approved really, really fast in 2020 to get drugs to the market in the UK. Because we don't want UK patients or NHS patients to be at the back of the queue. We should be pulling strongly to get this into the UK quickly. However, I think there's other countries which are Well, actually, I don't know, actually, because America's become quite anti-vax at the moment, so maybe they don't want this for their cancer patients. However, I hope the UK will lead. I mean, we were the first nation to push a cancer vaccine advance. We said we'll get 10,000 people through and get drugs out the other side, so they've got to see it through, surely.
Yeah. And can you talk maybe a little bit about what would be the patient impact? I think there's kind of two questions I have related to the cancer vaccine. One is like, what's the patient impact? Like, what does it feel like for me as a patient? Or like, are there any early data points that say that it's going to do X improvement over standard of care today? So maybe that's the first question. And then the second question I would have is like, what needs to happen in order for that vision to be successful and for people to have access?
So what does it mean for patients? Well, I think we've all had vaccines before, so we probably know what to expect in terms of a vaccine. Maybe a sore arm, maybe a bit of flu, maybe a bit of joint aches, but not a great amount of additional side effects compared to cancer care, which in itself is a little bit tough. So you probably don't notice it, apart from the fact that when you sign a consent form, it will say cancer vaccines rather than chemotherapy. And you'll know that you're getting state-of-the-art care in that situation. So I don't think patients will notice that. And also, if the NHS continues its current form, you're not going to pay for this. This will be part of your NHS treatment. So that would be fantastic. What was the other bit of your question? Was it what must be true?
Well, no, it's the second thing is the second part of the question would be like, what's the impact? Like, is it like going to give us 10% improvement for melanoma? Like, do we have any indication of like what that looks like at the moment?
If we got information from the phase 2 study, how likely is to shrink a cancer down, and you're looking at double-digit benefits, actually. So you're not looking at 1-2%, you're seeing double-digit benefits. I don't want to quote it because I think we just need to wait a few months until we know what that trial shows. But it was looking very promising from phase 2. And there's studies that I've seen where if you can recognize, I'm thinking of the BioNTech studies in bowel cancer now, there's a paper that came out with, if you can activate a person's immune response to recognize a cancer, that immune response is lasting beyond 7 years. So that's phenomenal. So you're having immune cells that can grow, stay in your blood, and forever patrol against cancer for up to 7 years. And that's amazing for some people. It's first generation technology, but that's a great benefit.
Yeah, just on a maybe even I think about it maybe from a personal basis, that just having that reassurance that my body's fighting the potential of my cancer coming back, like emotionally beyond like the scientific, like beyond the actual results, like the emotional kind of reassurance and what that does for people, that's kind of massive in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's better than having chemotherapy for. I mean, that's pretty toxic. Or maybe be using in addition, and you know you've got everything that technology that's available across the world.
And so maybe on this one a little bit, like what needs to happen in order for this to, you know, that vision that you've painted a little bit to be successful? Like what needs to be working in our favor?
So what would be fantastic is that you've got the patient with fear in their eyes because they've got lung cancer. The surgeon's got it out. They've had their chemotherapy and they want to have their cancer vaccines now. What's got to be true? Well, number one, the trials need to complete. They're now completing, so the evidence will be here in the next year or so. But there's two other steps that we need to do now, which is that the regulators need to see the data and approve it. And the thing is that it can take a long time to approve drugs. And you've got to balance the pros and cons now. If you wait for 2 years to approve a drug, then you've got all the 2 years of patients' lives which have been affected and never got the drug. And on top of that, I think it's about the NHS ability to resource it. If all they're interested in is getting people through the GP and to get chemotherapy, and that's all the focus that there is, and they're not worried about buying or getting new drugs into hospitals, then we will be stuck in 2025 for the next decade. But if they say we want to have cancer vaccines and we will reorganize our hospitals and get the drugs in and bring them into the country and resource that, then the future will come to the UK and improvements will be seen. I'm not sure where we are in that space at the moment. The country was very confident in 2020. We need good leaders to step up now and say, yes, we will have cancer vaccines in this country. Yes, we can reconfigure the NHS, and yes, we will get drugs into the UK to help people with cancer.
And what's the barrier there, if you don't mind? I'm kind of curious to explore a little bit. Is it just prioritization that what you're saying a little bit is budgets are going to one place and they need to shift, or is it like a cost benefit type thing? And we definitely see in the news at the moment the cost of pharmaceuticals being somewhat kind of prohibitive in some circumstances. Like, what's the sort of the major issue there? Do you think?
It's probably a combination of all, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can people envisage a future where cancer vaccines, the first jab, the first cancer vaccine, a personalised cancer vaccine, is approved and given in the UK? Do people want that? I mean, we were confident 2020 and gave that first Pfizer-BioNTech bid. That future is fantastic. And that's led to a great legacy of our country. You saw the NHS Galleri study. You see the UK COVID cancer programme. You're seeing a cancer vaccine advance. And that's created jobs and hope and technology acceleration. And that's what our country's good for, bringing technology accelerating it through. And yes, maybe it does cost a bit more investment up front, but what is the benefit for the world? And does the UK want to herald that? Or are we just going to hand it over now, say we've accelerated the trials, but we don't really see the benefit for people with cancer in NHS? So that would be madness. So it's probably a bit around people's abilities to imagine this future, people's keenness to have it. Would there be good NHS leadership? And also maybe a little bit about resourcing too, because maybe we all know that first generation technology costs a bit more, but then it will drop in price. If you open a market, if you give it to patients, there'll be economies of scale potentially.
Okay, that's a lot to think about.
I know, exactly.
Like, you're blowing my mind, and I'm like, I want it, but I'm not in the position making those choices.
And people would want it, wouldn't it, Dominic?
I think so. I mean, there's for sure. There's definitely vaccine skeptics out there. However, I think two things. One, that I believe is a minority. I'll have to look at the stats, and I'm pretty sure it's a minority. I think the second thing is, if your principles and beliefs can change quite a lot when when you're in a life-threatening position. Maybe at that point, people's personal convictions might change a little bit. I know I certainly would. But yeah, I mean, the vision is kind of a beautiful vision for a terrible disease.
Yeah. And I don't think it's an either or, is it, Dominic? Because we can have peace across the world, we can have clean energy, we can stop global warming, and we can also reduce the fear from cancer. It's not an either or. It's just willingness for people just to imagine that future and want it to happen.
Yeah. You talked about AI as the sort of the fourth pillar. Could you expand on that a little bit, or do you think we've already covered it?
No, this is
going to blow my mind?
This is amazing.
Okay.
I mean, we've gone from a world where AI was a concept. We used to talk about really old words like random forests. However, there's been changes, hasn't there? I think it's probably been heralded by OpenAI and ChatGPT. It trained on the entire internet and put the whole world's information onto our app. So I can ask it a question like, what was Dominic's previous job? And he'll tell me very, very quickly what it was and all the great things you did in the pharmaceutical sector. And it's just accumulating knowledge and learning quicker than ever before. And every edition is getting better and better and better. These hallucinations gone. So the question I was asking and thinking about now is, okay, so if it can learn from all the words that are out there on the internet, can it learn from everyone's cancer genomes and predict what will make a better cancer vaccine? And that's what I'm really excited about at the moment. The fact that the value now could be about the algorithm that makes a better vaccine. And so I started a little project, very, very small one, called the UK Cancer Vaccine AI and Supercompute Project, to try and see this make this happen in the UK. Make a learning algorithm that can make better cancer vaccines.
Can you say the name of that again? That
Oh,
was
yeah.
that was long, and it sounds like really impressive for a little project.
It's a little project. It's called the UK Cancer Vaccine AI and Supercomputer Project. I was really lucky. I got funding, resourcing from the Department of Science, Innovation, Trade. They've got AI research resource now. And so what's happening in the background is that the United Kingdom government, in its great foresight, saw this technology sphere coming and worked out how it could potentially improve human health. And therefore, we've started investing in supercomputers so that we can do it ourselves now. We can train our own models and make our own predictions and tools. And so the one that we're using is called Dawn. It's a supercomputer in Cambridge. And so what we're doing now is that in a UK supercomputer, we put up an AI tool, a GPT, start to move cancer data there and try and predict what the new generation of cancer vaccine is going to look like. I told you that we're trying to work out which of the 10,000 abnormalities you put into cancer vaccine. That at the moment is I think is a good art form, but it could be much, much better. We're now asking the question, does the supercomputer make better cancer vaccines? Yeah, and the other interesting about the supercomputer is it can keep learning based on as more data come into it. So we're going to try and answer the question, can we train new tools using supercomputers and AI to make better cancer vaccines?
And when do you get the results for this?
Oh, so this is this is an interesting one, actually. We're pushing as fast as we can at Oxford University because we believe that research should be in the open. I'm definitely not waiting years for this to happen. We're going to put the data straight out there into the public domain and say, yes, AI can make better cancer vaccines, or no, it can't. And it uses so much energy to do so, and it's hallucinating. But I think it's looking quite promising so far. No one's tried it. And again, I see these technology spheres coming together for this one. I mentioned the four, didn't I? Data, whether people respond, or whether cancer comes back, or whether they don't survive it. Genetics, making huge amounts of data from sequencing. Vaccine technology and AI. Now I see these four powers coming together in this project, and I'll put the data out there as soon as we can.
Fantastic. Can I just jump into the details of the AI vaccine supercomputer? And I've seen there's a lot of AI technology used for drug discovery, and the way I kind of articulate that in maybe simple terms is, instead of, say, like the large language models, the GPTs, for example, of the world, instead of using the language of words, these machines use, or these algorithms use, the language of molecules instead. Is that what's happening with the vaccine supercomputer, or is it different? It's looking at data, which is kind of numbers, and coming up with the recommendations based on vast quantities of data.
Exactly so, Dominic. The problem we're trying to solve now is it takes 20 years to make any given cancer drug, by which time we've got 500,000 people diagnosed with cancer every year in the UK. That is not fast enough. And I think the issue is that they're testing molecules one by one with pipetting. Pipette, see what happens. And it's time consuming and slow. And so drug development now is speeding up because you're able to use AI to look for patterns amongst the drugs, targets, to learn quicker before and say, well, this one's no, maybe, looking good, and just throwing things quickly. So we've done something slightly different. So you're right. So most of the AI drug developments are happening around molecules. We put this molecule together, this molecule looks better. What we're trying to do now is make the next jump now, which is to look at DNA sequences. I know, exactly. The genetic code of seen in the cancer, and now what should the vaccine look like now? So we're combining the genetic code into the AI, and that will hopefully give us a new jump. Let's see. Oxford University is trying really hard there for the Department of Science, Innovation and Trade here using this supercomputer.
So that's that kind of really takes us on to the future. So this you mentioned this is early, and I know you're kind of ambitious. I've learned that about you. But so let's say project forward, say like in 10 years' time, if these things are successful, like how does cancer treatment change for people? Yeah,
the crystal ball is a tough one, and my patients often ask me, how long have I got? What's the future look like? The thing I would say is that we, in a day, you overestimate what you can do, because I think I could do hundreds of things today, check my emails, organize dinners, do these events, but you can't do in a day what you think you can do. But within a year, you can turn someone's life around, you can reinvent yourself, you can enter a whole new different sector. So most people underestimate what they can do in a year. So now let's try and zoom out into what you said, 10 years. So
yeah, let's say 10 years. So, here we are, 2025, everything going well. 2035, what could cancer treatment look like? So I'm not asking you to predict, I'm just asking to think about a possible vision.
Yeah. So we've now got data coming online, genomics now being widely available. We've got vaccine technology in its most mature form, and we've got the brains to power it all faster than ever before. Well, I think I'll wind this back now. So the person doesn't come to me anymore because they went to Boots. Maybe there was a prediction algorithm. The blood test picked up the cancer early, and they're given a cancer vaccine. It's sorted. Or maybe it becomes a non-event. I think the most important thing I'd like to see is that the fear's gone. And maybe when they've got a cancer, it's caught so early that a drug could be given, which is AI designed for them and their immune system. And it's gone, it's eliminated, it's under control. I think that fear element has to go. And that, I think, why it's important, what it means they can have their Christmas and next Christmas and every Christmas after that. They can go to the weddings they want to see. They can keep working if they wanted to. They can go on holiday. That's where I want to see, where cancer's not this fear thing where you've got to hold your partner's hand and you're worried about the future. We've got all the tools to control it, recognize it, eliminate it. It's your own body doing this. That would be fantastic. I think it's possible because for some cancer types, you already have screening out there. And it's really important for people to keep doing those screenings like mammograms, lung health checks, colonoscopies. But that's only a few cancer types and people still slip through the net. Why don't we push it to the future now where you can have a test which picks up many different types of cancer even before you need to be worried about it, where it's tiny, millimetre or two. And then treatments are there which are safe, easy to give, which eradicate it. Something as simple as a vaccine or other types. It may not be a vaccine. It might be a bispecific or a cell therapy. Who knows what it'll be. But it should be no longer part of people's concerns. People as they get older worry about family, money, health. Maybe in that health bit, we don't need to worry about cancer anymore. It might be something else you can worry about, but hopefully it won't be cancer.
For me, that's super mind-blowing because I think throughout this conversation and even how I've been thinking about these technologies, I always think about them a little bit as additive. Like we have the Galleri trial, as you talked about, so now we've got another test for 50 types of cancer, but then in my mind, I'm still going through the same treatment path. I hadn't really grasped we can potentially catch things so early that we don't need the surgery and we don't need the chemotherapy anymore. We can then actually have the personalized vaccine that can treat that cancer that's been caught early. And then all of that happens in a seamless way, leveraging the data and technology to identify these things, and then the innovation in drugs that have also been created using the new technology to actually provide the treatment.
And why not, Dominic? Because if enough people go to school and study science and technology, enough people want to create companies, enough doctors want to see this through, why can we not let data flows, genomics, AI, and vaccines get us to that future where all the technology hit their full potential to benefit human health? Everyone's asking me at the moment, what's the point in AI? What's the point in genomics? What's the point in data flows? What's the point in vaccines? Well, this is the point. This is the point where we could get to if we want to let it happen. And it does require a bit of scientific leadership. How this country, the world did it in 2020. We said 1 year, we want to give everyone their freedoms back again. We want to control disease, and it happened. So let's bring that entire focus into cancer now, and let's see a silver lining of all these technology advances, data, genomics, AI, and vaccines, and make that reality.
Dr. Lennard Lee, thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation.
Thank you, Dominic.